Hello, America. This is Robert Reese, and welcome back to the CEO Show. We're here today with Matt Navarro. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to spending some time together.
And Matt Navarro is the global president of PMI Worldwide Brands, but a lot of people know it as Stanley 1913. Even like my daughter, who loves your cups and everything, which are very big. Talk about the difference between those names and why it was originally called Stanley 1913, because it's a great story.
Yeah, we're so fortunate to have now over 110-year history of Stanley 1913. 1913 is the founding year where our the original creator, builder, and inventor William Stanley Jr. created the first vacuum bottle. And it's one of the greatest gifts we have, Robert. And what I mean by that is many people have such an emotional connection to our brand over the last 100 years. I tell people, unfortunately, some hadn't heard from us in about 30 years, but we really took that emotional connection, and folks who were hunting and enjoying the outdoors with their father or their grandfather using a Stanley vacuum bottle, many times in green, have this connection, and we're able to really catapult ourselves using that emotional connection to reinvent ourselves a couple times over the last century or so.
And we're going to talk about those reinventions because you're going to hear it's like four different, completely different strategies that have gone, which is
We
really
call them the eras.
the eras you call them.
Yes.
Very nice. ERAS, not
Yes.
ERRORS.
Correct.
Eras,
Yes. Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So the coolest thing about Stanley is when he invented that, this keeps beverages warm for 24 hours, cold for 24 hours. It's the most amazing thing. I mean, and right now, what you've done is you've had a lot of partnerships. For example, I know like Caitlin Clark is one of your spokespeople as well, and you've many others. How do you really figure out who the right partners are to have as a spokesperson?
Yeah, that's a great question, Robert. I think really I would start with the fact that in order for us to stay relevant and connected to consumers, we really want to live at the intersection of sport, lifestyle, and culture. And especially youth culture, to ensure that we're staying, relevant with the youth of today. It develops a connection to with young consumers who hopefully carry that connection long throughout their lives. And a big part of how we do that has been through our collaborations and partnerships throughout sport, throughout entertainment, throughout fashion. Some of the more popular ones: the Love Shack Fancy, Post Malone, Arsenal, and PSG in the global football community. And as you mentioned, some in sport also with Caitlin, who's been an incredible ambassador for us. Nelly Korda, who's also the number one golfer in the world. Lionel Messi, in one of the great breaks of all time, is maybe the biggest Stanley fan in the world. He grew up drinking mate, which is an Argentinian brewed warm beverage, at 9 or 10 years old out of his Stanley bottle and his mate gourd. And so, as we think about partnerships, that's a lot of what I think about. How do we connect to the authenticity? How do we connect with people who really appreciate and understand the brand? And how do we make sure it feels really genuine and authentic to the partner, to our company and our teammates, and then most importantly to consumers?
Are there a few words that just define the brand to you?
Yeah, I think built for life is one. We have a built for life promise that really is a quality commitment to quality, sustainability, and social impact that's second to none. We were sustainable before sustainability is cool, is what I like to say. And it's not just a PowerPoint slide. We really live it. And so being creators, builders, and inventors, really innovating through originality and maintaining that built for life promise are really the things that we were built on, and we try to stay grounded in.
Now, it's so interesting because you're deeply embedded in your values and your vision, and sometimes you have you have reinvented the strategies significantly. Like when you started out, it was really for going to work. Then in 1965, it goes outdoors. Talk about the different eras, what they are, and how everything fit into the Stanley 1913 concept.
Yeah, as I said, one of the greatest gifts we have is our history and our heritage. And I believe, how I answer questions of like, what should CEOs and presidents be fearful of? And I think being fearful of not being agile and flexible and nimble is how companies die, frankly. And over our 110-year-old history, it's built on heritage, but we've been able to stay really relevant. From our founding in 1913 to maybe the mid 60s, we supported the American workforce. We kept construction workers fueled and caffeinated, and helped them bring their lunch to the work site. Kept their coffee warm from morning to night. And then as quick service food and fast food became more readily available, maybe even vending machines, the Stanley team shifted to the outdoor era. And from the mid 60s to about 2020, we really enabled and fueled people's outdoor adventures. And that's where a lot of people remember or have connections or early connections to the Stanley 1913 brand. And then in about 2020, when we really were looking for another reimagination of the brand, we saw a white space in an area to disrupt in hydration. And so since 2020, really have been the leading brand in hydration, focused on the female consumer, a disruptor in what we thought was a bit of a stale category. And through some innovative products and what I call the color revolution, which was like really bringing cool, vibrant, fashion connected style and color to hydration, has really led to the most recent velocity of high growth and just an incredible 3 or 4 years of surprising and delighting consumers around the world.
And you have had, I wouldn't say high growth, extraordinary growth. That is the growth every CEO wants. We have about a minute left, but you have before the commercial break. But talk about your whole Vitalize collection, because that is fascinating.
Yeah, I would say what leads us, we want to be diverse. We want to diversify, and I think that's future proofing the brand. And one of the ways we do that is diversify in category. And so we're a leader in hydration. We're really strong in hot beverage or cafe. And as we look at adjacencies and extensions of categories, mobility and storage are how people travel and get around with their hydration, with their Stanleys in their bags, is really important to us. There's also a huge wellness and fitness trend. And so Vitalize includes shaker and a tote bag and a backpack that really just help us keep connected to the consumer who's living a life in motion.
We're about to take a commercial break now, but anyone who wants to find out more about Stanley 1913, or you could say PMI Worldwide Brands, what is the website they go to?
Yeah, it's www.stanley1913.com. And yeah, we would invite everybody to visit.
And you must just love saying that. It is such a great name.
We do. We're very proud of it.
We're about to take a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to find out from Matt on a personal level about transformative moments he had. And then we're also going to find out about the new strategies where he was talking about diversification. Stay tuned. Welcome back to CEO Show, where we interview the CEOs who have reinvented the fabric of America. We're here today with Matt Navarro, who is the global president of PMI WW Brands, which is also affectionately known as Stanley 1913. And everyone loves Stanley. I think it's one of the most beloved brands. But let's go to the personal side now, Matt. So what was a transformative moment that you had that really changed your view on things?
Yeah, I think I would point to a couple. One more personal and just broadly from my background, and then one with Stanley. What I do, Robert, is really build high-performing teams. That's what I believe my job is. Surround myself with really talented people who are way smarter than myself, and mold us into a team that delivers. And I think in the middle of my career, I was presented with a really interesting choice from a mentor and an old boss of mine who was, Hey Matt, I think you could be a really good business leader, but what I think you're great at is leading teams and building teams and being a coach. And that was a really pivotal moment in my career that I really focused on growth and development of myself, being able to lead teams through transformation, and being able to build high performing teams. And that's what I love. So certainly I love the brand, but I've been fortunate to work for lots of different brands, and I have found being focused on that team, focused on the people around you, and focused on high performance have been just like critically important to what I do. I actually coach some American football, and the ties between coaching and business leadership are part of what I just love.
Well,
Go ahead.
I want to hear specifically about that because Newsweek, for example, has named you one of America's greatest workplaces. How does this manifest yourself? What are the secrets, the tactics, not just the strategies, to building high performance teams where everyone is engaged?
Yeah, I think leaning on your vision, mission, values is really critical to what we do. I do that with sports teams, and I certainly do that in the business world. And so, very early on in my tenure in this role, a couple of years ago, we spent considerable amount of time, energy, and resources on refreshing those vision, mission, values. So, our vision of we fuel the human experience is motivating. It's clear. It's aspirational, and it's something we can rally around. And then when I think about our values, that's how I describe culture. How I describe culture is how people treat each other and how you feel when you're in an organization or within a team. And so some of those are own it, which is around responsibility and accountability, stronger together around being beautifully original, connected, powerful team, doing the right thing, which is just about integrity and transparency and care and that empathy within an organization. And then last, and maybe my favorite as a coach, is play to win. We play offense where we choose to play. We play to win. We execute, and that's what the best teams do. So you can feel my energy in that. Like I just love. I also believe that that's what's most important in good times, but maybe also most importantly when adversity hits, is being rooted in your personal values and the company values. I think can really serve you well.
Yeah, and the biggest challenge of playing not to lose, where people get caught in that rabbit hole, it's a huge thing. How do you get people to focus on playing to win?
Yeah, I think clarity is really important. If I look back on maybe the last 10 years, I think some of the mistakes I've made is I have probably chased too many things, communicated too many priorities, and not been focused enough. And so I think clarity of what your priorities are is really important. And that seems simple, but what I also learn is you say things once and you believe people understand it. I think what I've learned most is that the reinforcement of those priorities and the repetition over and over and over again. And just when you think everybody gets it, say it again, has been really critical. And things I've learned, and we're not perfect, but I think we're getting there, and we're being much more purposeful about that reinforcement of clarity.
That is great. I remember Bernie Marcus, the founder of Home Depot, he said that was his key in the start. Have that clarity, and then you engage everyone in the purpose. So we have one more big question, which is you've reinvented as a company several times, yet stayed true to the core values. Now you have a new strategy, and this is after you're like the Beatles. They had the top 5 songs in April of 1964, and then they reinvented themselves. You're doing exactly the same thing, reinventing yourself, and you've the 3 pillars. Talk about what those are, because I think CEOs will love to hear this concept strategically.
Yeah, I think from our standpoint, it's really about diversification. And as I think I said earlier, I believe change and transformation are constant, and being agile and nimble is really critical. But we're looking for diversification in 3 ways: diversification in product mix and category. So it's diversifying beyond the quencher that your daughter and many around the world love, and was certainly our viral product. And it's really also, second, appealing to a global audience. Our fastest growing markets, Robert, are outside of the U.S. We're growing quickly in Europe and in Asia, places like Japan, China, Korea, the UK, Germany, and Spain. And so that strategy is working. And so that diversifying market mix beyond the US has been really important to us. And then maybe last is diversifying our consumer mix. So it's going, remaining strong and connected to our loyal consumer, but also pushing into new consumer segments, especially men in particular. And today's global consumer is always on the move. They're balancing work, play, passion. They're seeking things that fit into their lifestyle. And as we start to continue to find adjacencies, extensions like Vitalize, as you mentioned, we find partnerships and collaborations with athletes and entertainers. That's introducing the brand to many more consumers. Caitlin, in particular, her collection, I believe, was 50 or 60% of the people who bought Caitlin's collection were new Stanley consumers to the brand. So it's things like that, and diversifying consumer by global region and then by category are really the pillars that we're leaning on right now.
And if you had any one piece of advice to leaders, let's say if you had over 500,000 CEOs, which you do right now, what would that piece of general advice be?
Stay curious.
Love it.
I think curiosity is so important. And I think so many people believe when you get the big job that you have to know more. And frankly, you get the big job, you have to learn more. And I heard Jamie Dimon actually from the financial CEO the other day say something similar to this of the more responsibility you get, generally the less subject matter expert you are. And so remaining curious and leaning on really talented people around you, I think is what I would say.
Yeah, you have to be shallow and wide at the top. Yeah. That's for sure. So what a pleasure, Matt, it is having you on the show. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate it very much. Enjoy the show. And thanks so much for having me. And thanks for being a brand fan.
Yeah, and absolutely. And here's what I'll say. How could anyone not be a brand fan about fueling the human experience? Doesn't get much better than that. But here are 3 things, CEOs, that you learn from Matt to think about. Number 1 is be agile and nimble. Number 2, have clarity. And you're building everything on your mission, vision, and values, but have clarity about it so people know what the priorities are. And finally, it's about culture. And that really, as Matt said, it's how you treat people. See you all next time.